Hello, Warrior TV. Steve Knapp, the Mindset Warrior here, joined with my amazing co-host as always, the Resilient Warrior Tessa Spannenberg. And tonight, for the first time in Empower You, we have an extremely special guest. The amazing Alan Stevens is joining us. How are we going tonight?
Pretty good, guys. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Brilliant.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
My pleasure.
So yeah, for people that don't know, Alan runs the Campfire Project, which I'm very privileged to be a part of the community, and I love the work that's going on there. I'd love for anyone that's watching us that hasn't caught up with any of that. Alan, can you give everyone a bit of a rundown on what the Campfire Project's actually about?
Yeah, well, my business is I'm a profiler, so working with people and helping them to understand each other. A lot of my work has been with men, and with the men, when I was talking to them about issues that were going on in their life, where they had questions, they said, well, most of them were saying they were confused. They didn't know their role at home and they didn't know their role at work, because of at work with the gender equality, the political correctness and everything else, they were always on tender hooks about saying the right thing. And at home, they thought it was to bring home the resources and look after the family. But then we were told that, especially people of my era, that we were emotionally disconnected, that we were away from the home. So the men were getting frustrated, and I realised that frustration leads to anger, and in some cases that can lead to violence. And I thought, having a go at somebody who's doing the wrong thing doesn't solve the problem. You need to find the cause of it. And I thought, right, the men needed a safe place where they could come and talk. So, somebody not to advise them on what to do, not to counsel them, not to tell them whether they're right or wrong, but just listen to them. Be those eyes and ears that they normally wouldn't have in their life. And so I opened it up, and I've had women in there from day one. I was particular structure in doing that. I had a reason for it. But I allowed the men to come in and tell their stories. So all I do is hold their space, let them tell their stories without judgment, without criticism or anything else, and allow them to have that opportunity to have that safe place. Now, I believe that, when it comes to a community, it's a community's job to raise children, but it's also the community's responsibility to create a safe place for the men, where the men can then give themselves permission to share their stories, etc. And that's what happened in the Campfire Project. I then brought them into panel discussions, and we talked about masculinity, femininity, pornography, drugs, etc., all the different emotions. And then at that point, I was getting personal messages from the women going, we love these guys. We've never heard men talk that way before. And they wanted to get involved, which is what I was waiting for. So I brought the women into the group, started doing the one-on-one conversations with them, then brought them into the panel discussions as well. So we've had panel discussions with just women. We've had mixed with men as well. And we've covered, just about every subject you can think of. Even menopause and menstruation, and also does size matter in the bedroom? Because all of those issues, men need to have a better understanding. They need to know the women's view, and the women need to know where the men are coming from. And having those respectful conversations in 3 years, or just over 3 years now, we've had over 300 one-on-ones. We've had more than 150 panel discussions. Not once have we had any sexism, racism, or bigotry, and not once has anybody been disrespectful to anybody else. And the conversations, when you're having a panel discussion that goes on for an hour and you're touching on a whole bunch of different touchy areas, and for people to still have that respect for each other, and that's what the Campfire Project was about, created under the hashtag We Together, so that when you're a group like Men Too and Me Too pointing fingers at each other saying you're the problem, you're not going to get a solution. But when you come shoulder to shoulder with each other, looking at the problem, and you go, how do we work on this together? That's when you find solutions. And that's what the Campfire Project's been about.
That's brilliant.
Sounds amazing. Yeah. And so, Alan, does that stem from your facial profiling? Like, I think you said, yes, it does. But maybe you can explain that to us so that we can see how it actually ties into what the discussions are about, and how we can understand each other because of the facial profiling, I guess.
That's it. Well, see, if you think about it, relationships are the foundation of everything we do in life. And so to be able to read the other person, understand them, where they're coming from, and knowing how to speak to them in the way that they need to be spoken to. You then have communications and you have a relationship. As you know, we grew up with the saying, treat others as we would have them treat us. And that's okay when it comes to the respect level, because we always treat people with respect. So, because that's what we want. But when it comes to communication, it's a case of treat the other person as they would have you treat them. So in other words, talk their language. And if you're able to read that, understand how they take information in, know how they're going to process it, you know how much information to give to them, in what order it needs to be. You know how long they need to get their head around things to make a decision. Because, and the way this comes about is, and this is where some of the listeners might think this is a little bit woo-woo, your facial features tell me your personality. And very quickly to explain that, how that works, if you lift weights, you're going to build muscle. So you do bicep curls, you're going to build your biceps up. You won't work if you don't work your triceps, you're not going to build your triceps. So, and depending on how we do that exercise, depends on how the muscles shape as well. And so that's the first point. The second thing is the expressions on the face and the body language show how we feel on the inside. So the neurology and physiology are linked. So what we feel inside, we express outwardly. So if you concentrate and think very deeply while you're working away at things, the end result is you're going to pull expressions on your face, and you do that over and over. Those ridges and crevices that we create is therefore a roadmap, a history of how we like to think and process. And so now if you've got that, you know how that person needs to be spoken to. And if you know where you are on the world scale, you know how to change, how much you have to change to match them. So you could think of a couple finding their first partner, for instance, in that, knowing the personality of the person you want to connect with. You can read that in the facial features. You can do the same thing with how do you keep that partner? Understand their traits, because every trait's got an upside and every trait's got a downside. But once we've got that and we know how to talk to them, then I've got the micro expressions and the body language that tell us whether we've read them right or not. This is where we get the feedback. We also know their emotions. We also know if they're telling us the truth or not. And so it's a combination of 4 traits that I've put together and created rapid trait profiling. So it's proving to be one of the leading ways of reading people on the planet without needing to ask a single question. So if somebody walks past you, you can see their face, you can see what stands out the most, and straight away you know their personality, and therefore you know how to speak to them from that point on. And then you watch for the feedback from the body language and expressions, and you know whether you've got it right or not.
That's amazing. That's definitely a finely tuned skill, I'd imagine. It would take quite a bit of practice.
Yeah, well, the micro expression side of it, the training on that, well, the whole thing is, first of all, you and everybody else who's listening to this are all profilers. As young children, you are able to recognize facial features really quickly. And let's face it, if you've got young children, and the listeners out there, if you've got young children, how often do they push you to the edge but not push you over the edge? They are reading you, picking up the emotions and everything else. They're picking up the energy, and they know how far to take it. Because kids generally don't try and break us. They push us to the point to see if we will hold. And they'll just see when they will know when the breaking point's coming, and they'll stop. So every child had these skills, but as we got older, we got involved in games and sports and other activities. And the end result was, if we don't work a muscle, it atrophies. So if you don't practice reading people, it falls away. But then all I really am is a trainer who helps people to get that muscle back again.
Brilliant.
Because also, I guess we can learn bad ways of reading people. So, well, I don't know if you can call it bad ways, but, as kids, they would adapt to the environment that they grow up in and the parents that they have, or the society or teachers, anything like that. And they will adapt to that parent and, I guess, take on that traits, whether it is, most times it's subconsciously that it's programmed, this is how you should be, or, all those acronyms or sayings come out like a boys don't cry. And so we learn that, and we watch our parents when they are saying that, I guess. So we could also learn how to connect with people, and maybe they're not the right people because maybe that's not who we need to be with.
Yeah, well, the traits that
Around
we
the
have,
right.
yeah, the traits that we have, roughly half of our traits, give or take a few, in our DNA, we have what we call nature traits, the ones that are passed down from our parents. And then we have our nurture traits, the ones that we create in response to our environment. So they found that when they had, say, twins, for instance, who were taken away from their, were adopted out. And they found that the two, like a boy or two boys going off to different families, they would grow up different to each other. They would have a lot of traits that were similar, ones that were passed down, but depending on their environment, determined how they then created the nurture traits. So we are a combination of all of our experiences. But when it comes to the facial features, the first thing I can see straight away is the DNA ones that were passed down from the parents. And then over time, I see those start to develop and change, which will be response to the environment. So everybody has those traits. But how we use the ability to read people also comes back then to our character, how we decide to apply it. What sort of a person are we? So everything that we learn can be used for good and it can be used for the wrong thing as well. It's like a knife. You can use a knife to butter your bread, or you could use it to cut somebody. So it's the tool itself. It's the intent of the use behind it. So it's the same thing with being able to read somebody. So I teach people, if you want to have a better connection with somebody, if you want to sell to them, make more money, for instance, if you're looking after them and helping them get what they want, they will buy more from you. You'll be able to value add and everything else. So I teach people how to read other people in a positive way to create. If you want to get something, if you help other people get what they want to get, you'll get more yourself. So I teach people how that comes about. So some of the people who may have originally, well, let me use this for my benefit and I don't care about anybody else, realize that it's much easier to use it for the benefit of others and yourself at the same time. Because now you have better relationships with people, they remember it, you have more loyalty from them, you have referrals and everything else. So anything can be used for a good reason or a bad reason. It depends on how you teach people how to use it and understand their situation.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's all then it's all ecologically tied, isn't it? It's for you, it's for the greater good of the community, yourself, everybody else. Then you know whatever you're doing's on the right track. You're not just trying to manipulate or perverse the course of the way things should naturally be. And anytime you're doing things in that right manner, you can't really go wrong.
That's it.
So how do you know if, like, when you meet someone and they're a business person, for example, how do you know they like a specific thing, like they like service? Or I think I heard you speak and you said, not here, but one of your videos, I think you spoke about long projects or something like that. Like, how would you know that just off the bat, or when you just meet someone?
Okay, well, the first thing I look at, if you're looking about the value of things, it's actually in the bridge of the nose, the shape of the nose. Some people have a ski jump nose, others have more that eagle beak where it's more curved in that direction. And so you'll find that those have the more ski jump, they're all about receiving service. They like to receive service. They're also therefore likely to give service as well. Guaranteed, if someone's got that trait and they run a business, there's a good chance that they're not charging what they should be charging for the business because they want to give service and they're not thinking about the money they should be making. The eagle beak direction is more somebody who is into the value of things. So with them, if I'm talking to, say I was selling a car, for instance, I'd be talking about the great purchase price, but the value you're getting for that purchase. It might be dearer than the other car, but it lasts longer. There's less maintenance work that needs to be done. The resale value is better. The on-road running costs are better. And I'd talk about that. If I was selling a house and it's an expensive house, I'd be looking at the area it's in and saying, right, well, you're going to save on time because the shops are just down the road, the school's down there as well. And I find those reasons and explain it to them. With a person who wants the service and they're buying a house, well, they want to entertain. They want to have people around to see the place. So I talk about that side of things. And if I've got a couple, I'm looking at each one and talking in a particular way to match the style of one person, then turn to the other one and match the style for them. And at the end of it, I've got both parties going, yeah, this is a great idea. And generally find that they look at each other and go, how did we come to the same decision? Because we never do. Simply because I've changed the way I need to speak to them.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and that is just by looking at their profiles or at their faces, like
that's it.
The way we communicate or frown or smile, or I guess.
If I look at you, I know that Tessa, you analyse things. You need to get your head around it before you make a decision. I also know when you meet people for the first time, you like a little bit of space. Not that you're not friendly, but because you're more discerning. You want to work out who's safe to be around and who's not safe to be around. Now, people might see that as you're not friendly. But if I see you in a room talking to somebody else who's got the similar trait, then I know that you both trust each other, and therefore you're probably both trustworthy yourselves. So I'll come over to you to find out what's going on in the rest of the room. Who else could I trust? I know that you're going to be fairly fussy about things. They've got to be right when you're doing work, etc. And you're going to ask a lot of questions. I know that Steve is going to be straight to the point. It's going to be bullet point when he's talking. When he's analysed something and he's made his decisions, just give me the best way to do it and get the hell out of the way and let me get it done. and I know he doesn't mind having a meaty conversation as well. So getting into a conversation with people. But I notice that both of you, it's more about how things feel inside. So when you're busy working on something and there's a little bit of stress, don't come over and tap either of you on the shoulder and say, come over here and help me. You know, Tess in particular, I'd come up to you and say, look, Tess, I really need your help, but I can see what you're working on is really important. It really seems that you're focused on it. How much time do you need to be able to leave that to come and work with me? With 5 or 10 minutes be okay. If you told me 10 minutes, I'm going to come back in 11 or 12 minutes, and I'm even going to let you know that I've given you extra time. I'm going to say, look, I've given you a bit more time because I can see that was really important. But if you come over and help me now with my problem and we get stuck into it, we can get my problem out of the way fast and you'll be able to get back to your problem. If I just come over and said, come over here and help me now, you might have to come over physically because of our relationship, if so I was your senior officer, but you're not going to have your mind on my problem and you're going to resent it. But if I went through that process, you're going to go, okay, if I help Alan, I can get back to my problem sooner. But I've acknowledged what you were doing was important. And all of that I can see in your face straight away. I know that you're quick to give to people of your time, your energy, and probably in cases as well, your money. And sometimes you can overgive to people and leave yourself empty. So if I can see all these things, I know what hobbies will suit you, what sports will suit you, what careers will suit you. So a young child, before they get to school, we know what hobbies and sports. We know what they're going to be like when they get to school, their behaviour levels. Before they pick their final subjects, we know what careers will suit their personality, so we can guide them into the right subjects. So when they go to work, they find a job that they love doing, they're happier at work, and as long as the boss is not some of the poor standards we've got at the moment, say the boss is a good boss, they won't want to leave that organisation. They'll be productive, the company makes more money, and they're happier at work. They're going to be happier at home, which means a better relationship with their spouse and therefore a better relationship with the kids. So this stuff fits into everywhere.
Fascinating. I love the thing about the kids, especially, and guiding them, because often we are guided by, I guess, people in our lives and what we think we should do, and then have a career change when we 40, 50. And I'm not saying having a career change is a bad thing at all. We all need to evolve, but sometimes people stay in their careers because they feel, they're in it for so long, and they've never been happy. So that's fascinating. For that reason.
See, at the moment we're going through a thing, they call it the Great Resignation. And
I saw that. Yeah.
That's all about people who are finally getting to the point that they're fed up with work. They're fed up with the people they're working for. And so they're actually pulling away from the work. The next thing is going to be what they call it, the Great Clearance. And the great clearance is where the people will be naming and shaming their bosses on LinkedIn and places like TikTok, because it's got to that point that the level of leadership around the world is not that good. Most of the leadership training people were getting were a lot of it was camps to get out there and do things out in nature, but then you go back to work and everything's back to the way it was before. A lot of it is management training, but very little of it was emotional intelligence. So I've been talking about the fact in 2007 we had the global financial crisis, which they called the GFC. Well, I used those initials and called it the good for clarity. It was a wake-up call, but people didn't pick it up. 2016, the number of disengaged in the workplace was 66%. 2 years later, it was 87%. So almost 9 out of every 10 people didn't want to be at work. And then we had COVID hit. And next thing you know, we've got nobody wants to, or very few, about 80% of people don't want to go back to the workplace full time. And 70% don't want to go back at all.
Yeah.
100%.
And Alan, I mean, I've been very, focused on burnout in the workplace and people's mental health in the workplace. And I think this is such an important topic. If our managers could read us the way, I guess, you've just showed, it builds rapport and teamwork so quickly. And I guess, all those things that you were talking about, disengagement, and there's sometimes no clarity at work, and burnout is on the increase because employees are, because of COVID, working from home, working longer hours. So, this is such an important skill, I guess, for everyone.
And as you were saying before, you were saying, well, what if people are using it for the wrong reason and everything else? The bosses need to be able to read their people, because there's something in it for all of them, even the narcissist. The narcissistic boss, by staying the way they are losing money hand over fist. When people aren't happy in their work, if they feel that they're being bullied, their productivity drops by 70%. But not only them, everybody else who watches that bullying that's going on, their performance drops 40%. So the boss who is treating their people the wrong way is losing money. But the biggest catch cry you'll hear around the coaching world today in business is work on your business and not in your business. But you can't work on your business if you haven't got people working in your business. And for them to work in your business so you can work on it, you have to be able to remove yourself from it, and therefore you have to trust the people that are in there. So if you're not treating your staff the right way, you haven't got the opportunity to ever do anything about working on your business, which means you're going to limit its growth. And again, you're losing even more money again. So anybody who uses these skills for the wrong reason is actually shooting themselves in the foot. That's what I love about it. Because once it dawns on them that when you use it for the right reason, your staff are going to be happy, which means you can walk away. If they're happy, because it's the same as a love relationship with a partner. Your partner wants to know that they belong, that they're valued, that they can contribute and everything else. The only difference between having a love partner and men and women at work, your employees, is there should be no sex. That's the only difference. As far as everything else goes, it's the same. They want to feel that they belong, that they contribute, that they're valued. And when they do that, they take ownership of the business. And guess what? You got to remind them at the end of the day to stop working and go home, because work energizes them. I'm doing stuff that I really love, and I work ridiculously long hours. And everyone's saying to me, Alan, you've got to take a rest before you burn out. And I go, why would I take that energy out of my life? It energizes me when I'm doing work, and when I'm working with, especially when I'm working with parents with kids with autism and Asperger's or any of those other conditions that we're labeling kids with so easily today and over-diagnosing them in those areas. So that sort of work really excites me.
And so how would you work with those kids?
Well, I'll give you an example. I had one boy, 6 years old, 10 years ago, or almost 11 years ago now. He has Asperger's. His mother asked me to profile him, and I did that, by the way, from photographs, because he wouldn't sit still. So I got her to take some photographs and send them through to me. From those 5 photographs, I gave her a written report on how he needed to be spoken to and treated. she put that into place, but she was also very clever, and she took it to school, to the after-school care, and also the teachers, telling each of them that if they, the others were putting it in place, and if they didn't put it in place, it wouldn't work. Everyone had to be involved in it. And because each group didn't want to be held accountable for it not working, they put it in place. So she was clever. She played them against each other. A year later, when they said he would never do presentations in front of the class, he was up in front of the class. A year and a half later, they were able to reduce his medication with the doctor's approval, and they didn't need the psychologist anymore. When he was 11,
Wow.
he wanted a birthday party with all of his mates from school. She dreaded it at first, but had it. And the message I got from her was it was a noisy party, but it was just a boys' party. There was no problems at all. And, you know, he's 16 and he's been doing things, the conversations she says she has with him, she never could have had if he'd been on medication, because that would have held him back. Whereas by reducing the medication and talking to, all it was talking to him the way he needed to be spoken to, knowing that he was a kid who needed to, he couldn't sit for long periods of time. And you can see that in the body shape. And if you've got a child who's got that trait and you tell them to sit for long periods of time, it's uncomfortable. You can't, you know, there's no way in the world that you can say to them, stay and sit, because they will fight it, because it's uncomfortable. You ask yourself, if you're in an uncomfortable position and somebody says, stay there, are you going to stay there? As an adult, we don't. So don't expect the kids to. He also is a sequential thinker, so I had to get things into structured order, not just bouncing all over the place. So she structured the present, you know, when she was talking to him, put it out in a way in which he could see each bit and how it all worked together. Also easily distracted. So, you know, if any one of those three traits got triggered in the classroom, it would compound with the other two traits. And you'd have a kid who was getting frustrated because he's falling behind. He's watching all the other kids move forward. And so what they do, you know, diagnose him with more conditions and medicate him again. Once we realize that if you treat somebody in the way that they need to be treated, you have a better connection with them, and all those things are no longer a problem. And here's an extreme explanation of it. Say you walk up to somebody and you smile at them. You're pretty much going to get a smile back, aren't you? But if you go up and you frown at them or scowl at them, you've got a really angry look on your face, and you look, you know, you're staring daggers at them, they're going to pull back and move away. So everything we do, we are everybody else's environment. And so whatever we do impacts on everybody else. So if just by looking at somebody, you can have such a major impact, imagine what happens when you talk to them in the way that they need to be spoken to. And you actually can ask them questions in the way that they need to respond. So my youngest student is my 13-year-old granddaughter. And she started this when she was 11. And she just has a passion for it. Now, she's also become one of my business partners on a couple of projects. And we're putting a few things together. Now, in her case, she learned how to, you know, the bullies no longer affected her at school because she understood them. Because when all the problems we have in life is where we don't have understanding. So the more we can understand the other person, we remove issues out of our life. That'd be the same as if we're raising our kids, working with people at work, or with our love partner, our husbands and wives, etc. If we know their particular traits, if they've got a trait that's different to ours, yes, I can guarantee that trait was probably one of the reasons that excited us when we first got together with them. But it's like anything that if you like you had a chocolate that you loved, you eat it for every meal. It's not going to be too long before you don't like it anymore. So you get used to it. So if you've got a partner who's got what I call dramatic appreciation, is very expressive, then that's exciting to be around. But then you get used to it. Then you see that they're also expressive when they're stressed. So now all of a sudden you say they changed, they become a drama queen. But they haven't changed. Your perception of them changed. But if you know how to talk to that trait so it doesn't get triggered, you bring the excitement back into the relationship as well at the same time.
Yeah, so it's like you're talking to the person from their perspective.
That's it. Always.
Yeah.
The key to communication, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, see, as I said, Tess, you analyse things before you make that decision. If I came up to you and just started to give you the overview, I guarantee you'd be interrupting me and trying to get back and say, tell me more about that. Tell me more about this. And so with that, I'd just say to you, look, so there is a lot of information in here, but so I don't forget anything, what I'm going to do is put the overview on the table, just lay it all out so I can see I've put everything there, and then we'll go back and spend all the time that you need to go through that. And at that point, I start putting it on the table. If you interrupt, I can say, well, remember, Tess, I didn't want to forget anything. That's important to me. It's got to be important to you, hasn't it? As well. I get a yes from you. I've got a verbal contract with you. I can then go back and finish laying it out, then go back and answer all your questions. And I would spend all day answering every question you've got, because I know that you're going to analyze it, and you're also going to be, as I say, skeptical, somebody who wants to know why something works and get all the information for it. So I'm going to take all the time in the world to make sure that you get that. But I'd advise you, though, if you're talking to somebody who is more just the big picture, you'll try and tell them everything that you need to hear, which they'll turn off. It's like they will get it all, and then all of a sudden they will disconnect. So with them, you can say to them, look, there's a lot of information here, but I know that you just want me to put the overview on the table. I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to let you ask the questions that you need to ask. But if there's something there I think you need to know that you haven't asked, is it all right if I ask you that then? And the person goes, yes. And you go, right, overview. Okay, ask the questions that you want to ask. And I guarantee you're going to have a lot of questions in your head that they haven't asked. And if there's something you feel that they should know, that's when you tell them. And that way they know you're not going to be talking at them. They know that you're going to be talking with them. It's going to be a conversation. And so you pre-frame things in this when you can read the person.
Yeah, it's true. Because sometimes you can see when someone's eyes is rolling back in their head, it's like, oh, that's way too much information for me. Yeah.
Well, I presume, Alan, that you'd use eye pattern work in your whole facial recognition process as well to determine what somebody's thinking and reacting and how they're responding to certain questions.
Well, that's right. So your facial feature, I said, it tells you the personality. It doesn't tell you the character. That first of all, there used to be a system called phrenology, with bumps on the head. They used to think, well, that person would be a serial killer, or talk about their character. They debunked all that as rubbish. But funny enough, that's where neuroscience started to grow from, out of that misbelief. But the facial features, I said, it's how you're thinking and processing, not what you're thinking and processing, which is a character. So that's your personality. But then as I said, the micro expressions and body language give us a lot. And in NLP, I should say, they have a system of where the eyes move. The eyes go up for visually recalling something, or looking, a picture in your head of something. We look out to the side for what it sounds like, and we look down into our feelings and also our internal dialect, the thinking that's going on in our head. Now, anytime you ask a child, did you do that? And if they're looking at you and all of a sudden they look down, they're going into their kinesthetic and also their internal thoughts. Hey, I've been caught. Am I going to get into trouble? So the child is telling you a furphy when they look down. But we have visual up, auditory to the side, but we have one side of our body, which is our memory side, and the other side, which is our creation side. Now, they talk about the left side being the memory side, but remember, that's only for 90% of the people. The other 10% are the other way across. So this is why every conversation, even if it's in an interrogation with somebody, I'm always going to have a bit of idle chit chat with them first of all. And I'm going to get onto a subject that they have to stop and think about. It might be if I know that they're a football player or a fan, and in Newcastle we have the Knights. And if it's somebody in Newcastle I was talking to and the Knights is their favourite, and I say, oh, did you go to the game on the weekend? They go, yes. I will ask them about something in that game that I knew of, like, oh, did you see that particular tackle? What do you reckon happened? What did you see happen there? Well, as soon as you use the word see, they're going to look up and they'll see which side of the body they look to. So I ask them questions like that where there's no threat of they're having a need to lie or anything like that. So I then benchmark them, and then I go, well, back to what we came here to talk about. In that situation, describe to me first of all what happened then. My open questions are always describe, tell, explain. Once I go through that, Then I use the why, what, when, where's, and how's. They're the probing questions to get deeper. And then I go for the yes or no's. When you've got just the open questions where you've asked them to give you information and they have the control of what they give you and what they hold back, you're watching where they're looking. You're getting, you're benchmarking still. But then as you start to get into more tricky questions where you're getting closer to the stuff they don't want to tell you, that's when their face and their body language will start to leak information. And that's when you'll start to see the different movement in their eyes going to the opposite sides when you're asking for something they remembered, and all of a sudden they're looking to the other side of their body. You know that they're making it up. But at the same time, micro expressions, the face can pull 40, it's got 43 muscles and it can pull over 10,000 expressions. Paul Ekman, who did a lot of the research on the micro expression, he and his team put together a book called FACS, FACF, Facial Action Coding System, that looks at which muscles pull which expressions, and he mapped 3,000 expressions. Now you can go and get that book, which by the way is pretty thick. It's got videos on most of the pages on the electronic version, and it's hundreds of hours of, if you're an insomniac, it's bound to put you to sleep by the time you watch all of it. Or Paul, and also a guy by the name of David Matsumoto, who used to work with him and now runs a different company. They have online courses where you can actually learn how to read those expressions. Paul went to Papua New Guinea and he went to the Faray tribe. Now, they'd never seen a white man before in their life, never had a TV or a radio. And so they were as separated from the rest of the world as possible. And through questions that the interpreter asked and photos that they were able to use, they worked out that there were 7 expressions which are universal. It's anger, contempt, disgust, happiness, sadness, fear, and surprise. And those 7 expressions, if you feel any one of those emotions, you'll have that expression on your face. So if you're feeling anger, you're going to express anger. And he found that doesn't matter if you're tribal village, capital city, blind from birth, even those that have never seen an expression in their life will have a corresponding expression on their face when they have to feel that particular emotion. And so he realized that that was another way of picking up lies. If I was talking to you and I was talking about a good friend of yours who was just broken up from their partner, and I see a little sudden twitch of a smile, I know you're happy about it. So I know that I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting you to be unhappy. But again, I don't jump to conclusions and go, oh, you're happy that your friend's lost their partner. There could be a number of different reasons. One could be that, oh, you believe their partner was horrible, he was abusive and everything else, and they finally got away from them. It could be that, you're not too happy with your friend and you were hoping they get a bit of a kick in the bum, so they deserved it. Or it could be something like, well, one of them is now free and I've got a chance of going and meeting, taking that person out or going out with that person myself. So a whole mass of different reasons, but these little twitches give you indications, and you listen to the conversation that you're having with them. You're watching the little expressions. You're looking for all the pictures adding up. What picture are they painting? Not just one on its own, the same as one facial feature doesn't define your personality. One body language or one facial expression doesn't define your emotions either. It's a combination of all of them. When we put it together in a conversation with somebody, we can pick up exactly what's going on. And in fact, sitting on the other side of the room and watching some people talking, you know exactly what's going on without even being able to hear the conversation. You know who's getting along, who likes it, who's not connected, who's disconnecting. And it's a parlour game we play quite often. We go and sit in cafes and shopping centres and go people watching and talk about what we're seeing.
It's a good way to keep
wow.
practice,
I love people watching, but that takes it to another level. Yeah. So how long does it take to get the skill, or how long do you have to practice a lot, or
it comes down to that sort of question like how long's a piece of string.
Yeah,
I guess comes down to your need, your desire, and everything else. Because my background was 2 divorces, a lot of broken relationships, business partners who emptied the bank. And I had, when my first wife left, I had 3 sons to raise on my own. They were 4, 11 and 12. So when you put all those things together, I went through a history of finding it. I was terrible at reading people. So through necessity, I had to. And after my second divorce, that's when I really had to, I thought, that's enough. I've really got to get my head around this. And so I got focused on it. Now, Naomi Tickle, the woman who taught me the facial features, she taught that over 8 weeks. I think I did it with her over 3 weeks because she gave me assignments and I didn't wait a week. I got the thing back to her and said, okay, we're going to get together again. So we were almost meeting every second or third day and got through it quickly. You know, my granddaughters picked it up really fast because she had a passion in it. In fact, when she got a master manual, it arrived on a Thursday. They were flying out for Helsinki on the Friday to see her other grandparents, her mother's parents. And I found out she didn't read or watch any of the movies on the plane. All she did was read the book from cover to cover. And then when she wasn't reading that, she was walking around the plane profiling the passengers. So she was passionate to learn all of this. So she picked it up really fast. Others will go, okay, I do need this skill. I want to improve my sales. And they go, oh, this has taken a long time. It comes down to the individual. You know, how passionate are you? What's your need for it? And my job is to just facilitate that progress and get out of the way and let the person really do it at their own pace, whether that's faster or slower, so that they can shine at the end of it.
That's brilliant.
I guess it takes it to another level because you can have a meeting and, sorry, Steve, I'm jumping in.
That's all right. That's good timing because I just need to duck out for like 25 seconds.
Okay, I just want to ask this question because we build rapport, like, you know, you have all the mirroring techniques and, you know, sitting in a certain way opposite the person that you're talking to and making them feel comfortable. Because I loved what you said about you used photos because the kid didn't want to, I guess the mom gave you some photos and you could profile from that. So that's so interesting because I guess you could prepare for your interview or the business. You could research someone based on their social profiles now.
See, I jokingly tell people I'm a social media stalker. So if I've got to talk to you, I'm going to go and find your face somewhere, websites, LinkedIn profiles, Facebook, wherever I can find you. And then I know how you like to take information in, how you process it and everything else. If I can see a couple of shots where I got a face on, I got it from the side as well or angled, I can pick up more traits. And the more information I've got, the more I can put my presentation together. And then the traits I can't see, when I go through the door, I can pick those up really quickly because it's the traits that stand out the most, which are the main traits in that person's personality. Even though I'm looking at about 68 facial features, when somebody comes around the corner from, say, 10, 15 feet away, and as they pass my shoulder, I can pick up what the main things that stand out. It might be 7 or 8 traits. From that, I've got the bulk of their personality. And because it's only that small number I need, I can then sit down. They can be gone, and I can be sitting down talking to somebody else, and for the next 15, 20 minutes, talk about that person's personality. What situations would work for them? If you had them in a team, what roles you would give them, what careers would suit them and everything else. All of that information can be taken from that. And so reading people can be done that quickly. You don't have to ask a single question. That's what I like about it. In the case of, say, I've got to ring an executive and I'm doing it by phone, I will find their face on LinkedIn, their website or whatever. Most, large firms, you'll be able to find the executive somewhere or another, Google them or whatever. I then get them on the phone, and while I'm talking to them, I say, look, can I just ask you a couple of questions as we're doing the first introduction? And they go, yep. And I go, and I'll use some of those examples that we talked about before. If they're an analytical person and they're talking to somebody who just wants the overview, have you had this situation? And they go, yeah. And I go talk about another trait that I can see in their face. We're talking to someone with the opposite trait there again and go, have you had this situation? And I do about 4 or 5 of those. Usually within that number, they come back to me and go, yeah, but where are you getting all that from? How do you know that? And I go, I'm getting it from your photograph. Hang on, we're on the phone. Oh, I've got your website here and I'm just looking at your photograph. And they go, you're getting that from my photograph? And I go, yeah, well, if I can get that from your photograph, if you had these skills, what sort of relationship would you have with your staff? Would you be able to understand them better, be able to get better loyalty, to know when they're telling you the truth and when they're not telling you the truth? and how to motivate them in the right way and how to put them in the right positions. And they go, yes. And I go, and your salespeople, do you think that if they could read the clients in that way, they'd be able to value add to the services? They'd be able to get a better deal. They'd be able to get more loyalty from your customers. And so you end up not just having customers, you have raving fans. And they go, yeah, I reckon so. I go, well, when do we meet? There's my cold call done.
Yeah, wow. And Alan, you did a few other profiling, I guess, as well. Myers-Briggs and all the e-disc or disc.
Yeah, disc and all the rest of it.
And like your thoughts on that, do you use it all together, or like, for example, like?
Well, first of all, everything has a place. Every skill that you have, you don't just take one skill and throw everything else out. Because I know some people will learn NLP and they go, oh, NLP is the best thing. Others will do massage. Others will do Reiki. And in massage, a whole different types of massage. And they'll say the Bowen is better than therapeutic. And everyone's arguing about my dad's bigger than your dad. Well, the whole thing is that it's a toolkit. Because my background was a massage therapist, aromatherapist, master NLP, master Reiki level. Colour therapies and sound therapies I introduced into the Singapore hospital for the kids with ADHD back in 2006. So all of those different skills I've had, but I always pull out the toolbox what best fits. But with the Myers-Briggs and DISC and things like that, I found that when I was teaching a group of people who were learning currency trading, they got me into this company because none of their students made any money. They had a great instructor, they'd finish the training, they'd put money on the table and they'd lose it. So they wanted to know what was going on. So I went in and I used Myers-Briggs and DISC profiling to try and work their personality out. But we asked questions, got them to fill out questionnaires. Well, once we started training, and particularly when they started putting money on the table, going live trading, they weren't matching their personalities. And so we're talking to a few of them. They said, oh, we tried to figure out how we should answer it because we want to be a great trader. We needed to have the right personality. I went, no, we need to know your personality because when you're stressed, no matter how you prepare yourself, you'll always revert back to your own. So people can act in a certain way, learn skills and everything else, but when they're stressed, boom, straight back to their own style. And so with that, we needed to know that. And it was from a workshop I was doing Myers-Briggs with a group of people. Somebody just said to me, Alan, have you ever looked at reading faces? And that's what then got me looking for a better way of doing things. And I found Paul Ekman and Naomi Tickle, who taught me the two different skills. And I brought those together with the body language I'd had from years ago and the NLP. And so the whole thing comes down to it. I still use a little bit of the Myers-Briggs, but not the full 16 dichotomies. I just use the 4 superficial ones at the top. The introverted intuitive, the extroverted intuitive, the extroverted sensing person, and the the introverted sensing. Because those 4, in that order, are the process of how you build a business. The introverted intuitive is the one who comes up with the ideas, passes it to the extroverted intuitives who get excited about it and go off and talk to the other extroverted sensing people because they're all excited. They sell it to them, and the extroverted sensing, being the technicians, put it in place and get it working. And that's how the company grows. Then it's given to the introverted sensing, who are your accountant types, who make sure the books and everything else balance and everything else. Then it goes back to the INs at the front to start to reinvent the business again. So at that level, I'll use that. If you're going to advertise a position at work, yes, use those. Because you've got 1,000 people applying for 1 or 2 positions. I tell you now, you don't want to sit down and profile everyone's face one at a time. You'll be there forever. But you use those other things for that. But one of the things I found that wherever you ask people questions, you are limited by their level of education, their understanding of the words that are being asked, their culture, their gender, and very much in particular their emotions. Because when you fill out one of those questionnaires, you are controlled by what you're feeling at that moment. If you're feeling great, you'll get a different result than what you would have got if you were unhappy. And so a lot of people will say, oh, well, I'll observe the person, and over a period of time, I'll be able to work out where they fit, say, in the DISC profiling system. And I go, yes, but if you're having a good day or a bad day yourself, the person that if that person came to you on the day you feel good, and it came to you exactly the same way on the day that you feel bad, you will see them as a different person, because what you're tolerating and what you'll take on. But as I say, you don't throw those systems out. There are so many places where you can use them. And especially if you're using them at the top level, where you're not getting into the deeper levels, to actually do it as a workshop to get people to understand and get to start communicating with each other. So we know how each person likes to respond. But then the bosses, and if you're doing a webinar, an interview, for instance, having the skills of being able to read the people, you take it to a completely new level. So you're not only able with the psychometric profiling, get the people to communicate together with each other, but with the face reading, you're able to sit above that again and be able to see all that, but also then show them how to actually work with each other with the deeper parts of those profiles. Because if you've got somebody who's very self-reliant, they make a great boss. However, if they've got staff members who all are more analytical and need more time, they've got a mental motive, which means they look at all the different possibilities, as opposed to you, Steve. As I said, you've got the physical motive, you want to get to the action. Person with a mental motive has got really caught up on the thought. So they take longer. And if you're somebody who's just given them a task and you've got self-reliance, you've got high level of confidence, you're going to look at them and go, why are they procrastinating? Haven't you finished that job yet? But if they know that's the way they are and they know the strengths of their traits, they can then utilize that to get the job done using the strengths that they have and set it up in the time that you need it as well. So it's knowing yourself and knowing the other person. The power of this is just incredible.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, isn't
Sounds
it?
like it.
I reckon we could talk about this for another 10 hours, but we're running out of time, and we have totally ignored every single comment in the box for the last 3 minutes. So
my fault. I'm sorry.
I'd just like to acknowledge everyone that's been on. We've had some hellos from Adam and Kerry and the great man Robbie Cummins, and the Rainbow Warrior Caroline's on as well. So I just wanted to say thanks for all of them giving us a shout out. And we'll just jump through. We've got a few really good questions here that we'll just try to tap off on those before we run out of time. And Caroline says that it's really interesting, Alan. I believe children are masters at reading faces. Would you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. Every child is gifted, but because it's like any muscle. If we don't work it, it atrophies, and that's what happens. As we get older, we just forget the skill. As I said, I'm a personal trainer. I just come back and help you to remember what you knew as a kid.
Yeah. And then Adam tapped onto that as well with he also believes that they're masters of reading body language.
All of it.
Reading face.
They read all the energies. That's the whole thing. Your body language, your facial expressions. They know what they can pick up the energy from you as well.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Like, they're sponges. They haven't been broken into different thought patterns of how to view us or how things are. They just see us for what we are and what's going on at their actual point in time. They're probably better at reading us than we would ever be without doing a lot of training.
That's it. They usually control things. And by the way, remembering that, as parents, our job is not as a carpenter or a sculptor and turn our kids into something. Our job as a gardener, our job is to nurture them to be the best version of themselves. So the more we can understand them, the better we can do that and be a better service to our kids. Yeah,
and I'm finding the older I'm learning more and more by the day from them. I'm not the teacher. I'm the student. They're teaching me more and more by the day.
I always say to people that I'm a part-time teacher but a full-time learner.
Yes.
Yeah, and it would be so great as parents to, especially when you have teens and if you can read them, you can just talk their language, because often they just don't want to talk to you at all. So,
It's well, as you can see my name on the screen, this is a gift for all the people who are listening. My website is alanstevens.com.au for Australia. And after that, if you put the / in it and the word free, FREE, that'll take you to a free course where you'll be able to learn a couple of the traits and where the eyes move when somebody's sourcing information. So that's a gift to your people.
That is well worth remembering, viewers. Make sure you put the / free on the end, because you're going to get some great stuff tacked on there as well. And I reckon, I know Adam's been wanting me to ask this question, so I better sneak this one in as well. Alan, do you think communication is the biggest downfall in the world of education and the workplace?
Absolutely, because as I said, without building a relationship, well, you need communication to do that properly, to build the strong relationships. At school, we're teaching kids subjects. We're not teaching them how to think. We should be doing problem-based learning, not rote learning. We should be teaching them to their level. The communications, emotional intelligence is a thing that we should be teaching most of all. Yes, they'll pick up the maths and other things, but here we are in Australia. I know the Prime Minister here wanted every child to do programming. Well, most kids aren't going to do any programming when they get older. So you're wasting that time at school, and they're going to feel like failures if they're not good at programming. Find what the kids are good at, teach them those subjects, and they'll be happier, more productive, and better for everybody. It'll even reduce the mental health costs that we have in the country, because everything we feel inside, we express outwardly. Every thought we have creates a chemical reaction. The negative thoughts put out negative chemicals, which are eating our bodies. But if we turn around and we're happy and all the rest of it, the thoughts we have are actually feeding our bodies. Everything's connected, and that's what people don't realise. But change education, that's one of the passions I've got. My target is to create and train my competition. We need more people doing it, and they need to be doing it right, though.
I could not agree.
Absolutely. Such a fascinating. There's so much you can do with being able to read someone's face. It's like so amazing. Yeah. I mean, we learn a few things in our coaching, like the eye patterns and like you were talking about the kinesthetic and, if you're remembering something or if you're making something up. But yeah, it would be so awesome to learn more in depth, especially when we can help our kids or whoever we have in our lives, how they can talk to us and how we should be talking to them. Will probably reduce the rates of divorce and families breaking up if we could actually communicate properly with each other.
Exactly. As I mentioned before, my first wife left and I had 3 boys to raise on my own. Many years later, after I'd been married and divorced a second time, I realised my youngest boy was 16 at that time. He was living with his mother and fighting with her all the time. I'd take him out bush, we'd go camping, he'd come back respectful. A couple of weeks later, fighting with her again. And I realised if he didn't respect his mother, he would then not respect women as he grew up, and I could see him repeating my history. And I knew my older boys were watching him as well. So if I worked with one, I was working with all 3. And at the end of it, I went to her and I said, look, it's up to me to teach them to respect you because they're not learning it from you and they won't learn it from a woman. It needs to be a man. And it really needs to be my job. So if you trust I'm doing this for them and not for you, which she did. And I said, right, if they have any questions, just send them back to me to ask me what's going on. Anyway, we built a relationship as far as co-parenting the boys at that stage and having respectful conversations. Then when my oldest was in his early 30s, she needed somewhere to stay for 3 months. And she came to me. She said, you got a spare room? Can I be a lodger? Separate lives? And I said, as long as it's separate lives. Just for 3 months? She said, yes. Well, she moved out 3.5 years later. So proving that the decisions you make in life are the control. People don't do things to us. We actually respond to them and we do it to ourselves. So I could hate her for walking out, or I could love her for the fact she gave me 3 sons that I love and respect. Without us being together, I wouldn't have had them, and I wouldn't have the 6 grandkids I've got now. So therefore, I could look at her differently, and because I changed the way in which I looked at her, we were able to cohabitate for 3.5 years. So everything.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Just remember, whenever you're feeling down, nobody did it to you. It's a decision that you took on for yourself. When you change that decision, you change your life.
100%. That's a brilliant statement to finish on, I think. And one quick little bit of housekeeping again, as always. Coming up at 7 p.m. UK time, Dale Walsh will be back with his Straight, Sane and Sober show. And tonight he is joined by the amazing Caroline Bennis, our Rainbow Warrior. So that'll definitely be a show not to be missed. You will absolutely love that, I can guarantee it. And for everybody that's tuned in, giving us the love, support, and comments, always greatly appreciate it. Tessa, thank you as always. And Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure. We have learned a monumental amount in the short space of an hour. And if you're ever free again, we would love to dig deeper into so many other things. I'm sure we could, cover another hour in the blink of an eye.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And if I'm tagged into the post of this, for the people who didn't get their questions answered, I'll go through and put some quick responses to them for you as well. So they'll get their questions answered.
Right. So, Adam, if you're still watching, make sure Alan's tagged in this, please. So we'll see Dale in another few hours. I'll be back tomorrow night with the Power Hour of Mindfulness and the amazing Samantha Jones, who's a great, great friend of mine that I did my NLP training with. She'll be telling a wonderful story with a bit of heartache and pain thrown into the mix as well. So, guys, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone that's tuned in, we love you so much and appreciate it all. And we will see you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Steve.